Ready? Okay. Call the Planning Commission meeting of November 27th to order at 6:00 p.m. Roll call.
Chair Salas,
Present.
Vice Chair Singh,
Here.
Commissioner Corey, Commissioner Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Franco,
Present.
Commissioner Juarez. Oh, sorry, she's not here. For the record, Juarez and Sandu are not here today.
Commissioner Singh, lead the flag salute, please.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Potential conflicts of interest. Any commissioner who has a potential conflict of interest may now identify the item and recuse themselves from discussing and voting on the matter. Does anyone have a potential conflict of interest?
Yes, I'll be recusing myself for item number 2. I'm the listing agent for that subdivision.
Okay. Any other? Okay. Oral communications. At this time, any member of the public may address the commission regarding any item over which the commission has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the chairperson for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Is there any oral communication? No one in the audience?
No.
Okay. All right. No one's online. Special presentation, introduction of city planner Kamara Yogi. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Commission. I am very excited. I had the privilege of introducing Kamara to the City Council at the last City Council meeting, but presenting him to the Planning Commission, which is tasked with, zoning and guiding the City Council with land use related issues. I think it's just as important that we introduce him with as much enthusiasm to you guys. So with that, Kamara comes from a long line of great planners from Madera County. In terms of his experience, I'll let him speak to that. But from the city standpoint, we couldn't be more excited to have Kamara here. What you'll see at this table is community development, for the most part, is fully staffed. We're waiting for a building inspector, but once we have that, we'll have a full community development department. Even economic development. I think Alicia's in the building. She's here as well. So community development has staff to move projects forward. And I think the testament of what you see in a future item is you see 3 signatures on the staff, 4 signatures on the staff report. That's how much work it took for us to get through an item. So we're excited to have Kamara here. I'll let him give his own introduction to you guys, but from a staff and an administration standpoint, we couldn't be more excited.
Good evening, commissioners. Thank you, Jerome, for the introduction. My name is Kamara Biawogi. This is my 4th week, I believe. So just being here has been really amazing. I'm glad to be part of a team that is moving forward. The development and growth of the city of Selma is very surprising to me. I did not know all of the developments in the pipeline and essentially everything that's working behind the scenes. And now that I'm part of that, I'm just more excited to be a part of this team. I'm coming from Madera County. I've been there for the past 6 years, starting from planner 1 to a senior planner. So there's a lot of growth in there, and I come with a lot of knowledge. Just in the planning base and the GIS base. So working on this side is kind of more of the administrative, the policy aspect of planning that I'm really looking forward to implementing and being part of this team. So I don't want to expand on it too much, but just happy to be here.
Welcome.
Welcome to the team. Our consent calendar, consideration and necessary action on the minutes of the August 28th, 2023 meeting. Motion and a second, roll call.
Motion on, first motion, Commissioner Franco.
Yes.
Second motion, Commissioner Vice Chair Singh. Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Chair Salas.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's a variance, consideration of a variance application 2023-0042 to reduce the rear yard setback from 15 feet 0 inches to 10 feet 3 inches to allow a 2,183 square foot new residential single-family residence, living area 1,700 square feet, property address 1812 Yerba Court, APN 390-241-08. The project will also include the approval of a notice of exemption.
Evening, Commission.
Sorry, I'm gonna step out.
Thank you for that. Oh, do I need to wait? Okay, good evening, Commissioners. My practice is to let the planners that are in charge of the projects present the items. So Faye Macias, Assistant Planner, will be presenting this item, and that's what you will see going forward is you'll see the planners. I'll more be in the background now that we're staffed with planners to do their job. I'm here for, you know, big picture items, answering questions, but also to provide some context to maybe some of the items that they're doing. But for the most part, planning staff will be presenting their own items.
Thank you, Jerome, Chair Salas, rest of the commission. So before we have agenda item number 2, submittal 2023-0042 GJ Garner. Again, they're applying for a variance. Purpose of this agenda item is to hold a public hearing for the Planning Commission to consider this application for a variance to allow for a rear yard setback. The applicant here is a project manager, Destiny Gallison. Owner is a GJ Gardner, and the project address, as mentioned before, is 1812 Yerba Court. And the applicant's proposal is to consider of a variance application to allow for a reduced rear yard setback from 15 feet to 10 feet 3 inches. Our analysis of the project is that this is zoned in the R17 one family zone, 7,000 square foot minimum lot size, which requires a minimum rear yard setback of 15 feet. The applicant is requested to reduce the minimum rear yard setback to 10 feet 3 inches. The lot is located in your attachment there, attachment 1 of this project site plan. It's located at the beginning of a knuckle, what we call a knuckle for cul-de-sac, which really forces the front yard setback further into the property line. And this is typical within the subdivision. As a result, there's less area for the usable rear yard for future residents. This lot is a vacant lot. However, to be able to add another home model, it could be constructed by the applicant. That may eliminate the need for the variance altogether. Planning Commission does have the ability to deviate from the minimum setback to allow for the reduced setback for the above mentioned property. But they must make the following findings. Number one, that because of the special circumstances applicable to the subject property, including size, shape, topography, location of the surrounding, the strict application of the title deprives the subject property of privileges enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity and under the identical zone classification. Number two, that the granting of the variance will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in the vicinity or zone in which the property is located. And the last one, the granting of such variance will not adversely affect the general plan or the purposes of this title. The project qualifies for Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, Guidelines Section 15305, Class 5 exemption. Minor alterations in land use limitations, and therefore a notice of exemption is in compliance with the CEQA and was prepared. This notice was, the public notice for this project was published in the Selma Enterprise on November 15, 2023. And additionally, adjacent property owners were within 300 feet were notified of the public hearing via public mail notice on November 17, 2023. So before you, we have proposed for the Planning Commission to consider this application as either adopt a resolution to approve the variance, reduce rear yard setback to 10 feet 3 inches, or we may adopt a resolution to deny the variance application to reduce the rear yard setback from 10 feet 3 inches. Any questions?
During the public hearing, I will first ask for staff's comments and reports on the item being discussed. After staff's presentation, I will then open the hearing to public testimony. I will then close the public hearing, at which time no member of the public shall address the commission unless specifically asked by a member of the commission through the chair. The Planning Commission will then discuss the matter amongst themselves and take action on the item being considered. I'll open the public hearing to public comment. If anyone is present which wishes to speak in favor or against this item can come forward to the podium. You are limited to 3 minutes. No one in the audience, anybody online? No one
Online.
in the audience, no one online. So we'll close the public hearing and bring the item back to the commission for discussion.
If I could, Chair, there was a question from the public about moving the camera. We're having technical difficulties with our cameras tonight. There's only one camera working that faces the public. The one that's facing the commission tonight is inoperable. The camera that is facing obviously doesn't show staff. It shows the public though. So sorry about that, guys. I know you want to see our beautiful faces, but that's the way it's going, considering the technical difficulties we have.
Okay, I have a question. The setbacks, you're talking about a 5-foot difference, which is kind of significant for me anyway, for the backyard. You did mention that they don't have plans for a home for that site yet? Or they do?
Our plans for home is just these plans that were submitted is what we can be altered, right? Make it a smaller home. But the plans submitted currently are for this house that's going to encroach into the rear yard.
But they have plans for another home that could fit without changing the setbacks.
The assumption is that every home buyer has a set of plans that may be able to be adjusted. They don't just have one set of plans, they have multiple set of plans based off of the buyer, right? So the assumption would be that we haven't seen a different set of plans, but it's logical for them to have a different set of plans that may be able to fit in a better configuration with less encroachment or no encroachment considering 1,700 or 2,800 feet plus is what's shown. I mean, there could be houses that are 1,400 square feet. There could be houses that are 1,200 square feet within their library. But in this instance, the buyer and the home builder have proposed the 1,700 model, which is their model home, which is 2,183 total square feet.
So I have another question, like since they are like increasing the total covered area from about 483 square feet from 1,700 square feet to they're trying to make it 2,183 square.
No, that's the total square footage of the home. So 2,183 total square feet includes the garage. 1,700 square feet of that total home is livable space,
Excluding the garage.
excluding the garage. So
Okay.
the garage is 483 square feet.
So since they are like covering 5 feet almost, so is there going to be any issue with the in case of any emergency, if the emergency wants to go inside, like fire?
If I'm not mistaken, the setback, variance is only a small portion of where the house located is, based on what I'm seeing here, correct? It's not like the whole property, just that one little corner. And I definitely see when you talk about the criteria that staff was mentioning about the shape of the lot. It's obvious this is kind of a unique shaped lot, so that's understandable. I don't see how this would cause a danger to the community or the neighborhood around it should it be built. To me, it seems to meet all the exceptions for the variance, and it doesn't seem that it's really the 5 feet or the 4 and a plus feet difference is not really the one big section side of it. It's just a little corner portion of it is the reason for the variance.
It's cutting the size of the backyard down.
I mean, the configuration of the lot based off of where it's located on the knuckle forces the house back. And because of that, the backyard is reduced and meeting setback. Apart from putting another home model, this is the model that they chose. We're not sure. We don't have, their home model catalog or inventory of what they can propose. But as proposed, because of how it's laid out, it does reduce the rear backyard area. Now they do have side yard and some rear yard to the southern portion of the property, but in that portion, it's just that corner that encroaches within the setback.
I've lived in a cul-de-sac lot. I had a very strange backyard / side yard, lots of room. I don't see how this is going to affect anybody or anything negatively. It doesn't go the full length of the back of the house. I might have a problem with something like that. But because of the skewed position of the footprint of the home, I think that the minor amount that is affected that we're having to vote on today is more than made up with for the rest of the home and the side yard and the backyard.
You can see from the map here, you're cutting off a piece of the backyard, but you're also gaining a piece of the opposite end. So you're really not losing any size. It's just more the shape of the backyard.
Yeah, and the other opposite corner of the home, it's actually 5 feet longer than
Yeah,
required.
exactly.
So you gain it back.
Anyone have any other questions for staff?
I'll make a motion to approve the variance.
I'll second.
First motion, Commissioner Franco. Second motion, Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Vice Chair Singh,
Yes.
Chair Salas,
Yes.
motion approved.
Item 3 on the agenda is conditional use permit. Consideration of a resolution for a conditional use permit 2023-0032 to permit the use of a mental health rehabilitation clinic at 3810 McCall Avenue, Selma, California, APN 358-380-26. The project will also include the approval of a notice of exemption.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kamar Biawogi. This is item 3 on the agenda. Crestwood Wellness Center, conditional use permit proposing to occupy a vacant commercial space within the Selma Plaza to establish a wellness center. This project will be located at 3800 and 3810 McCall Avenue, Selma, California, APN 358-380-26. With a notice of exemption, a categorical exemption 15301. Now, there has been some changes to this item. The staff will be recommending the continuation of this item to the next Planning Commission meeting scheduled for the 22nd of January. The item was proposing to be amended. This is further analysis of the project. The project was proposing to amend CUP 2019-004 to establish a mental health rehabilitation center referred to as a wellness center by the applicants that will provide psychosocial rehabilitation training and support. But we are requesting for that continuation for January 22nd.
And if I can add, there's an email requested from the applicant's representative included in your packet requesting that continuance. I believe Patricia Curtin is on the line as well. I don't know if she can raise her hand if she would like to speak, but as Kamara stated, staff is proposing as requested by the applicants that this item be continued to.
Correct. That is the second attachment or exhibit B. A portion of the email does state that they are requesting reasoning, or the reasoning is behind the admission criteria that they would like to kind of finalize and go over with staff and the applicant side. But if the applicant would like to speak further on that, more than welcome.
We don't need to do any action. Oh, okay.
Hi, Patricia, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you so much. My name is Patricia Curtin, representative for Crestwood, and I just wanted to confirm the staff report that was provided that we are in fact requesting a continuance to the January Planning Commission meeting. We appreciate your consideration of this and hope that you grant us the continuance. Thank you.
Staff recommendation to continue.
Correct. Staff is available for any additional question.
I want to ask city attorney, like I live on McCall across the property 3800 and 3810. So what is the limitations for if there is a conflict?
Catching me off guard, but I want to say it's 500 feet. Hold on 1 second.
From where that building, so it doesn't count the parking lot. Oh, it does count the parking lot.
That means you're.
Yeah, it's 500 feet or less from the property line of the parcel. Unless there is clear and convincing evidence that the decision will not have a measurable impact on your property, which I don't think would be.
It's an apartment complex directly across the street,
Yeah,
across from McCall Avenue.
I think you would need to recuse from a decision. on
Yeah,
that.
that's good. So
And then I live in the mobile home park behind it.
Do you have ownership interest
In the mobile home park,
in your property there?
I own the house, but I don't own the property. I rent the space from the McCall Village Mobile Home Park. I
Uh,
I would have to, I mean, we could take out a tape measure and measure how far I am.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a large complex. I'm probably maybe,
Well,
street
the
over,
reason
but-
why, I think it's different for you is because this wouldn't have an impact on your property value because
because I don't own the
you can
property.
essentially move your property anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
we're giving each other the same look for the same reason, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really, what is in that spot doesn't really affect the value of
Okay.
your piece of property. It really only affects the value of the owners of the mobile home park.
Okay.
You own across the street or you rent?
He's renting an apartment across the street.
So since he's renting, he doesn't have to recuse himself. Affect him.
Doesn't
Yeah,
affect you
only if he
because
has
you don't
a
own the property.
financial interest.
You don't
correct.
own the property, so you're good. Okay. We're both okay. Do we need to vote on the continuance? Okay.
Move to grant the continuance.
I second it.
Thing that I would ask is that we make clear that we're granting the continuance to the date specific of what was it? January 22nd, 27th.
Yes.
Okay, I move to grant the continuance to the January 22nd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
Perfect. That way we don't have to renotice it. First motion, Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Second motion, Commissioner Corey.
Yes.
Second motion, Vice Chair Singh. Chair Salas.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Did you get Frank?
Commissioner Franco.
Sorry, Commissioner Franco.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Okay, fourth item on the agenda, a comprehensive update to the zoning ordinance. Consideration of a recommendation to the city council revising Title 11 zoning of the Selma Municipal Code to comply with most current housing state law, update the zoning code to reflect changes to the general plan, and clarify the development standards, removing redundant or obsolete code sections. The project will also include the approval of a notice of exemption.
Good evening again, Commission. This is a fun item and it's a long-standing item that has multiple years invested by the department. But I'll let our contract planner, Trevor Stearns, give the staff presentation on this, but we are extremely excited to bring this item to you.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Jerome Keene. Staff has prepared a presentation for this evening that will be shared on the screen here. Perfect. So like Jerome had mentioned, this is a longstanding item that the city of Selma, in collaboration with our consultants, have been working on for the past few years. Consultants Rincon and Mintier Harnish. The proposal in front of you tonight is the consideration and the subsequent recommendation to City Council for the approval of the zoning ordinance. As a part of that, absolutely, staff is available to answer any questions. In the event that, we don't have all the information, then we can discuss that at that time. But between the three planners we have here in Jerome, and the consultant online, correct, we should be able to answer any of your questions. Okay, so just went over the proposal, a little bit about the background. If, I don't know if any of you were still, are on the commission at that time, but, in 2020, the city was applying to obtain SB2 grant funding, and that grant funding was intended to fund the zoning ordinance update. The zoning ordinance update is what we would consider in our planning circle would be a long-term planning project, such as the like of like a general plan or a community plan. The zoning ordinance is a living, breathing document that is supposed to be updated as things improve with either technology or new uses or new industries come into play, new development standards, things like that. It's supposed to be a collaborative process between industries and market, and also market-driven ideas and the city or other local jurisdictions. So in 2020, the city applied and was awarded the funding for SB2 to fund this project. The important deadlines that I want to make sure everybody is aware of while we're going through this project, obviously, since it's a part of a grant, we have certain obligations and responsibility under the grant. By the end of the year, what we want to aim for is Planning Commission to have a recommendation to City Council, and then City Council will then, at the beginning of the new year, would be able to adopt the zoning ordinance, whether that be in January or February. We're going to coordinate with City Council and of course Planning Commission in order to have give everybody enough time to review this document, because it is a large, important document. So as a part of the grant program, it's a planning grant program. The intention for that is to prepare, adopt, and implement plans that streamline housing and accelerate housing production. As a part of this, we wanted to take the opportunity to not just look at housing, but also do a comprehensive update of the zoning ordinance, because I know it's been lacking for quite some time that we haven't taken a holistic view of the zoning ordinance when we're looking at these updates. As a part of the process, this is a discretionary project, or considered discretionary project under the state CEQA guidelines. And so we prepared a notice of exemption and a findings of consistency memo attached to that notice of exemption in order to comply with state CEQA guidelines section 15183, which is the consistency with general plan and community plan and zoning exemption under state CEQA guidelines. So
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Sorry. Can you go back a slide, please?
Yeah.
At the bottom, it says important deadlines, Planning Commission consideration by the end of December and City Council by February 2024. What happens if those deadlines are not met?
Those deadlines are self-imposed for the most part.
Okay.
In collaboration with HCD, they obviously want to make sure that cities are moving or making progress, moving the goalpost, or moving towards the goalpost, I should say, and achieving those projects and completing those projects. So in collaboration with HCD, we've had a couple of conversations with them, and while there's no consequence for not meeting those deadlines, we want to make sure that Planning Commission and City Council are aware of staff's self-imposed timelines, because we want to get this thing up and running and as soon as possible. What we have here is a really great product, and we want to start implementing that as soon as possible.
Thank you.
And if I could add, as Trevor said, showing progress towards completion of a grant funded project allows us some leeway maybe on future funding to show that we can complete a project in a timely manner. Makes HCD look at us favorably that we are trying to comply and meet the mandates under the grant, which were promote housing and various other items related to compliance with state law, right? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's not languishing out there We want to complete it in a timely manner because we do have other potential grant applications that could come from HCD as well as other state agencies. And if we show, complacency or being lax with completion of an existing project, they may not view us as a viable agency for future. We'll get into maybe some of the timelines because we understand that it is a large item to consider. But as Trevor said, we want to get this going because we do feel like this will aid in some of the processing and reduce a lot of confusion. But I'll let him get into that part of the presentation.
Yeah, we're not done. We're not close to being done with the presentation. No, I'm just kidding. So a little bit more about the background. Obviously, we've had this project has been a longstanding project, and so with that, obviously, we've done outreach meetings. Most recently, as a part of the comprehensive look at updating our development standards, the zoning ordinance is the objective design standard meeting that I'm remembering. A couple of you were in attendance to that, to the joint city council and planning commission workshop that we had. So along those lines, those occurred when we received grant funding, in 2021, 2022, that's when a lot of that outreach occurred. So we've already discussed the notice of exemption. So in order for staff to kind of boil down the scope of this project into a 10-slide presentation, we wanted to answer just a few questions, and it's very similar to what you have in your staff report, just as kind of a tool for staff to help hone in on what's really important with the ordinance. We ask what and why. What is a zoning ordinance? Planning Commission, City Council, obviously they're fairly familiar with that type of that document. For the public itself, they might not be as familiar with that reference or that type of document. So what we want to do is we want to answer that simple question. So zoning ordinance is a regulatory code adopted by a local jurisdiction to maintain consistency between development projects across zone districts. So the city is divided into several zone districts. Each city is different. They don't differ a lot, but they differ varying amounts. Residential, commercial, industrial, public facilities, open space, multifamily, residential split between multifamily, single family. That's all very common. You also have central business districts, mixed zone districts, things like that too. Like I said, the city is divided up into those specific zone districts. Those zone districts establish uses that are allowed, and those uses in terms of new development or a request for that use to exist on that property, there is certain procedures that need to be met. And that's also one of the goals achieved through the zoning ordinance as well. Additionally, the zoning ordinance serves to dictate city processes dependent upon the location and type of project being proposed. And for example, what we have here, and one of the main points that we wanted to stress during the zoning ordinance update is obviously we took an account of how our zoning ordinance right now operates versus what we want it to be. And so this is just an example of what's in the zoning ordinance right now, as we wanted to consolidate a lot of the information into tables. Everybody loves tables. Planners love tables. It cuts down on pages and pages and pages of stuff. So what you see here is an example of that. We have commercial development standards, that's straight out of the zoning ordinance, and also the permit processing review authorities, both of which were not as easily accessible or user-friendly in the current municipal code, or zoning ordinance rather. So this, as an example, just shows not only is the zoning ordinance primarily there for the regulation of developments and the implementation of development standards pursuant to the general plan. But it also provides, it's a multifaceted document. It provides the processes and the procedures that planners, Lupe, Kamara, myself, we would adhere to when we get an application that comes in the door, or someone wants to develop, their vacant lot, for residential or commercial purposes. We have a procedure that we go through, and that's clearly outlined in the municipal code. And we want to encourage people to use it now because it is a lot more user friendly. So the next question that we want to answer is why? Why is the zoning ordinance being updated? The current zoning ordinance is made up of about 35 chapters. The 35 chapters include a variety of different regulations, general applicable development standards that are applicable to each zone, zones spread across different chapters, things like that. The zoning ordinance was originally codified, I believe, in 1963. Sometime in the 1960s, I believe 63 is the last date that I was able to see. Since then, there hasn't been a comprehensive update to the zoning ordinance. And so it's been evolved over time to address newer and newer development patterns, concerns by the state, such as housing. Housing's been the popular topic for the past 20, 25 years. And so you see things like ADUs, SB 9 coming into play, and that has just been kind of tacked on to the ordinance itself. So as you can imagine, as something gets updated over time, staff change, people come and go from the city, things like that. There is a disconnect from the ordinance itself. Some people question what the previous guy was doing in terms of why they updated this way, things like that. And so without really accurate paper trail or anything like that, it's hard to kind of decipher these things. So as a part of this project, staff took a look at the entire zoning ordinance, and we did a holistic update. We have certain key points that we want to kind of hit on, that we really focused on in order to make this a better ordinance for not only staff, but also the public too as well, because like I said, we want the public to use this document more and more, and they would be the best, I guess, metric in terms of how user-friendly the ordinance ultimately is. So the highlighted items here that we want to go over is consistency, transparency, user-friendliness, compliance, and intention. So these key terms are elaborated with the text in the boxes there. With consistency, implementation of the city's general plan. That's the main goal of these types of documents. I would reference Michael Durkee, but I think only Jerome would know who that is. But he has a pyramid of kind of the importance of planning documents, and general plan is at the top. Everything needs to comply with the general plan or be compliant with. So we want to make sure that consistency is there. As things update, like I said, things get changed, removed, revised, etc. And we want to maintain that consistency because sometimes people make mistakes, human error, and that consistency could not be there in some instances. Transparency, clearly defining application procedures. That's one of the things that we wanted to stress during this update, because if it's clear to staff, then it's going to be absolutely clear to the applicant, because staff will interpret all that is going to be required. There doesn't need to be a lot of interpretation of what is actually required. And so staff can point to these sections saying, okay, section XYZ, you want to build a residential home or commercial building, this is what you have to do. And then they're on their way. So it streamlines the process in that way. Removal of subjective interpretations. That's exactly what I just mentioned. Just taking out the human aspect, quote unquote, of the zoning ordinance. That's going to lead to a lot less or not interpretations, but the variability in how people interpret over time. Unfortunately, the reality is Lupe, Kamara, me, Jerome, we won't be here forever. So having something that is going to be easy to interpret is going to
Not that we don't want to be.
yeah, but that's just a matter of the fact we won't be here forever. Cutting down that subjective interpretation is one of our goals, yeah. User friendliness, comprehensive consolidation of chapters. As I mentioned, we cut it down from 35 to 8. The usage of tables, matrices, diagrams. We wanted to stress that the removal of zoning district domino effect. And what that means is the way that our code was set up, just to give a brief example, would be we have a list of zone districts for commercial. For instance, we have C1, C2, C3, and CR. C1 is a neighborhood commercial, C3 is a general commercial, C3 is intended for your Walmarts, your big box stores, your strip plazas with an anchor store, whereas neighborhood commercial is going to be a corner store, a liquor store, a pizza place, beauty salon, smaller uses, less intensive, really. And that's kind of the barometer that we're working with. But in our previous zoning ordinance, or the current zoning ordinance, C3 allows for C2, C2 allows for C1. So effectively, you can have your beauty salon in C3. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to establish a clear separation, not that that won't be allowed in this proposed ordinance, but we wanted a clear separation of the uses because we wanted to have these development patterns in the intended places of where they should be in accordance with the zoning map.
And if I could add, in C3 and C1, you can also do R3, right?
That's true too,
So
yeah.
the clear separation of uses of what they're intended in the general plan is part of the implementation of the zoning ordinance. So if you have a designation that's industrial, let's say M1, it's industrial in the general plan. Our current M1 zone allows C3, which allows C2, C1. So the issue is a consistency with the general plan and again, having a reasonable expectation of what could be constructed on this property if it's zoned a certain way. And it's good for neighbors because there's a reasonable expectation. It's good for developers. They have a reasonable expectation of what's going to be built next to them. It just makes it very clear cut and simple as to what the expectations are on a piece of property instead of, and we do land inventories all the time in terms of we have this much commercial land, industrial land, residential land, multifamily. Makes it really hard when you don't know what that use could be tomorrow. If just someone buys it and wants to do something different, that domino effect of the zoning ordinance makes it really difficult to enforce the consistency of the general plan and keep reasonable expectations of what could be there. And then you have the compatibility issue of if you have someone who built a house in an industrial zone, but then someone buys an industrial property, now they have to accommodate impacts to that residential property, which isn't necessarily how it was intended, right? So by creating this separation of uses, it makes it really easy for staff to now say industrial is industrial, commercial is commercial, residential is residential, multifamily is multifamily, et cetera, right? And so removing that domino effect, I think, was probably one of the biggest wins in this zoning ordinance update because it creates that clear separation of uses.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition, the usage of visual aids, like I said, we have a lot of tables in there. We have some diagrams as well. That's all going to help the experience of the user, whether that be the developer, staff, the applicant, whoever may be looking at it can take some solace into the equation that, you know, there's going to be some diagrams and it'll help explain some of the more complicated features of the zoning ordinance. An extensive use or extensive list of definitions. that allows for, like I said, similar to diagrams, it allows for complicated terms to be elaborated on so that you can refer to it as you're reviewing it and get a better understanding of what exactly, for example, what is a setback? Where is that measured from? What is a low barrier navigation center? Things like that. Those are defined and you can look them up and then you can refer back to where you need to go. So compliance. Compliance is a big one as well. Update to ADU regulations. Those have been changing almost every year, it seems. And so this was our opportunity to make sure that we have the latest and greatest of those regulations incorporated into the zoning ordinance update. Consistency with current housing state laws. Just like ADUs, there are several housing state laws that were implemented and are in the process of being implemented. So for instance, big ones like SB 330, as Jerome mentioned, housing crisis of 2019, that's the same Senate bill. The Fair Housing Act, those are all important state laws that are driving development that cities need to be aware of. And if they're not aware of it, then they're not compliant with some of these state laws. And as Jerome mentioned, HCD is the one who's looking at these state laws. And then when you apply for funding, they're going to look at what type of documents you have or what you're using. And they're going to say, you're not compliant with some of these state laws. So it all comes kind of back around to being compliant is going to then bode well when we go for funding for some of these state agencies. 6 cycle housing element compliance or housing element programs. We're in the midst of the 6 cycle housing element. And as we have reviewed our draft housing element, there are certain programs that are involved in the housing element that require updates to your zoning ordinance compliant with some of these state laws, such as like listing of definitions, allowing for uses in different, specific for residential uses in specific zone districts for residential, just building that out, a greater variety of housing types, things like that. And we can get into that a little bit more, but that's also very important as well, because that's one of the more popular items that HCD constantly looks at when they are reviewing jurisdictions' applications for funding. Intention, streamlining the development process. That's a big one, and that's what we want to also make everybody aware of, that we want to streamline the development process, and some of the procedures that we have implemented will do that. As they are requirements throughout the process itself. And so that allows us to meet with the applicants, get on the same page, review what their development is and what they're required to do. And we can do that in a more timely manner with some of these procedures. Ensuring consistency, ensure consistent implementation over time. That kind of goes back to what I mentioned about, having a, I guess, less interpretive zoning ordinance that allows for staff right now, but future staff to get plugged in right away and then just get going on applications or projects, because there's a lot less guesswork involved.
And if I can add regarding the intention, I think everybody's heard me talk about during development presentations, the development workshop that I put on, streamlining the process, right? We want to make sure everyone understands that we're trying to make things easier to understand, because the easier they are to understand, the easier it is for applicants to come in with projects that meet requirements, that they don't have questions about requirements. Ensuring consistency over time will just make it easier when applicants come in. They've done it before, they understand the regulations, and the process is repetitive. It's easily repeated by staff. As Trevor said, who knows, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, knock on wood that doesn't happen. But if I did, the zoning ordinance would clearly delineate what the expectations are for development, right? I'm sorry, that's an example that was given to me by a planner at Madera County when I started. She always made us document stuff. So anyway, the development over time, removing, ambiguous terms, adding terms that weren't defined. That's, I think, a big one that makes it easier for us to sit here and say, this is an item compared to what you're saying it is. It's clearly defined, it is not allowed, or it's clearly defined, it is allowed. There was a lot of interpretation of terms in the prior zoning ordinance because there were no definitions for some items. Am I just too loud?
Yeah.
The issue here. How about I'll talk quieter. I'll talk a little bit quieter too. So from that end, I think the zoning ordinance update from their understanding, they're gonna look at us and say, they'll know what they're allowed to do. They're define what they're allowed to do. Reasonable expectations of what they will get out of the project.
Alrighty, so we had some objectives or goals that we went over, kind of highlighting the zoning ordinance update process and kind of what we wanted to achieve. Here we have some major updates that reflect the implementation of those thoughts, goals, objectives. And we've distilled them into a couple of categories here for you. Of course, this is not all inclusive, and it's hard to fit the 400-page zoning ordinance update into, like I said, the 10-slide presentation, but we did our best with highlighting these these major updates. New procedures, preliminary development review, or PDR, is a transformed process that we currently have now. Previously or currently called PRC, Preliminary Review Committee, now Preliminary Development Review. And that is a process that is intended to provide applicants proposing a new project with relevant initial information on general or specific plans, regulations, policies, and consistency with the municipal code, such as, or in addition to environmental compliance, development standards, technical studies that are required as a part of the environmental analysis, things like that. This is the first stop on the development process in which a developer will come to the city, and when they apply for a new development, let's say for a tentative subdivision map for a single family residential project, we would ask them, okay, please go through our PDR process, and we'll walk them through that. It's a less restrictive application that allows for the developer to get their foot in the door, submit a conceptual, submit a brief project description, and an application and a fee. And that will allow for staff to review the material that's submitted and provide initial comments and feedback on all of those items that I just previously mentioned. This will allow for developers to get an idea of what the requirements will be when they move through the process. For instance, if they have if they're proposing maybe 1,000 square foot lots, and a 3-story single family home on each of those lots, we're going to have some questions. Rather than getting down the line and go through the tentative subdivision map process, invest several $1,000s into environmental studies, the preparation of a tentative map, the payment of multiple application fees, rather than going through that process, they can go through this PDR process with the conceptual, with the project description, and we can give them that feedback saying, hey, maybe not do 50-foot tall single family homes on a 1,000 square foot lot. That might be a terrible example. I don't know. But you get what I'm saying. If something is like that, or if they're proposing too small of rows and fire needs a secondary access point, that's probably something more reasonable, to a major street, then we would ask them, hey, you might need to lose a lot in order to provide a secondary access point to an arterial or a collector that fire would approve of, because that's a compliance issue with the fire code. And so things like that, those are big things that we want to catch at that time, so they aren't surprises later on when they get their conditions of approval.
I can add, there's been discussion about the preliminary development review PRC process. Currently, it's not mandatory for people to come in and have a discussion with us. A lot of value in people coming in early and talking to staff about what their process entails. And this proposal for the preliminary development review process, we're making it mandatory, so that we can provide in writing what the requirements are for them to move forward. So there's a clear documentation of, here's what they submitted, here's what we've told them to do, here's what their expectations are going forward. On top of that, the proposal going forward would be, currently the fee is 50% refundable if they submit towards credit of their subsequent application.
Months.
6 months, sorry. 6 months. Proposal would be 100% refundable within 50% refundable within a year if they that responds to their conditions, because we're doing a lot of legwork up front that we're gonna be able to. Although we're making it mandatory, it's essentially free to them to get in the door to find out what their development requirements are when they submit their subsequent project. As Trevor said, there's nothing preventing someone right now from submitting a subdivision map, spending time on an engineer to draft the subdivision map, survey the property, and spend thousands of dollars, and it's not a viable map. That's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to prevent people from spending money without any knowledge of what they can actually do. If they spend money on the preliminary development review process, what they're gonna get is they're gonna get a clear path to what they need to submit and how they can adjust their project to comply with either the general plan, the zoning ordinance requirements, California Environmental Quality Act, Subdivision Map Act, etc. Whereas now, it's if they choose to, right? And we have numerous projects that have been in the shop for years because they've submitted and we've told them you have to submit these technical documents in order to move your project forward, and they don't understand the process or what have you. So what we're trying to do again is create a clear path, streamline the process. Yes, it's mandatory, but again, if you submit your project, you get your money back. Also gives incentive for them to resubmit the project within 6 months, right? For a year, at least they get some credit. So again, what staff is trying to do is just be transparent with what the requirements are for potential projects so that they understand. We understand, we understand clearly, right? Because that's why we're here. The public and most seasoned developers, out of town developers, big time developers, they understand the requirements for the most part. We still have a lot of mom and pops that come in have a lot of in-town developers. We have a lot of owner builder types that come in. Process would give them clear documentation of what their process entails, what the requirements are, and what the expectations are. That's a big one, and I probably won't jump in and talk about, but that preliminary development review is.
Are you aware of any municipalities that also are doing this currently?
Almost all of them, to an extent, right? A lot of them aren't, or not a lot of them, but some aren't mandatory. But for instance, Visalia and Clovis, Visalia, for instance, has a requirement that you submit for, they call it a site plan review. And they meet every week, you submit by an X time, and they meet on the subsequent meeting and they review their project and they let you know, revise and resubmit or proceed, okay to proceed, right? And so this is essentially, it's similar to that process, but we're providing a more robust review and we're providing a formalized comment letter detailing the exact process. So it's a little bit more legwork on our end.
And the legwork, I think, is warranted given issues that the department has had with moving projects. We want to be clear. We just want to be clear what the expectations are. Like Trevor said, Visalia has a process that they've been doing. They're doing it so well, theirs is actually free. They have staff to do it though. Making it free with an asterisk. Getting preliminary comments. Biologists to go survey. Whatever it is. And what we're trying to prevent is
Doesn't love a buy one, get one free. All right, up next, director review and approval. Director review and approval is one of the, I guess, lesser intensive applications. It's intended to allow for the approval of projects that conform to the standards established for the zone district and do not require discretionary approval. A lot of these are lower level use permits. So things like home occupation permits or short-term rental permits, the allowance of those would all be subject under the DRA process. Previously, that has not been something that's been implemented in the current or I guess previous zoning ordinance. Zoning clearance. Zoning clearance is also a new procedure that identifies proposed land uses and projects comply with development standards of the zoning ordinance. It's essentially kind of a step below the PDR process. We get a lot of requests from either applicants or the title companies confirming zoning designations and what can be built on their property, things like that, for refinancing purposes or whatever the case may be. With this process, it's very simple. We give them an application. It gives us the details we need and a fee, and then we kind of we go on our way. We draft the letter and then we submit that back to them in a timely manner. And that process previously was never formalized or codified in the ordinance. Next up, temporary use permits. Temporary use permits, again, is a new application, and that intends for, obviously, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's a use permit for temporary uses, essentially. And what that is intended for is like Christmas tree lots, pumpkin patches, temporary construction trailers, other temporary uses of that nature fit within that that type of permit. And it's all non-discretionary. The three that the three that I previously listed are all non-discretionary or ministerial, so it's director approval. So there's no need to go to planning commission. And I think that's kind of the idea, is we want to streamline more of these processes. So that's why that's proposed in that way. So moving on here from new procedures, we have the consolidation and ease of use. The consolidation and ease of use kind of goes hand in hand with the user-friendly goal that we've identified. Use classification matrices and have been added for all zones. And the consolidation of 35 chapters into 8 chapters was an undertaking, but it was achieved through the implementation of some creative organizations, such as like the matrices and diagrams, things like that. Residential housing was obviously one that we wanted to stress a lot as well. New ADU regulations added new residential type uses consistent with the Housing Act or the Housing Prices Act and the Fair Housing Act. Both of those very important to the development of residential uses. Added objective design standards for single-family and multifamily developments, also an attachment in your staff report, that detailed objective design standards that were discussed and vetted through the public workshop process during that joint meeting, identifying what the community is looking for in terms of residential design standards, and we also discussed commercial design standards during that meeting as well. Also, a requirement of Senate Bill 330 is a local jurisdiction to have objective design standards as well. And revised development standards for all residential zone districts that are intuitive and relative to minimum parcel size requirements. That's a big thing. Obviously, consistency with the general plan. General plan has density requirements for each land use designation. Each land use designation has a corresponding zone district. That's kind of how those two work. Sorry if I'm getting too in the weeds, but so those zone districts have minimum parcel requirements. Those parcel requirements are reflected in the density range of the land use element of the general plan, which has those density ranges. So making sure that we maintain that consistency is very important. Previously, we had, for example, medium density residential is 4.5 to 9 units per acre. Well, our smallest zone district that was allowed in that land use designation was a 7,000 square foot lot. And so we're thinking 7,000 divided by, what is it, 43,560 square feet? It doesn't get even close to 9. So accounting for right of way, dedication, things like that, that's a gross acreage amount. And so we want to better achieve the goals of the general plan and also the goals of the state by promoting these different types of housing uses, such as a more dense single family neighborhood. That's something that's been lacking in Selma, and that's the direction that the state wants to move, and that's how people want to move because they want to be able to afford these types of things,
Are you
right?
talking like planned unit developments and those kinds
Yes,
of?
but without the planned unit development part.
So let me add on to this. So under our current zoning ordinance, as Trevor said, the smallest single family zone is 7,000 square feet. You could do a planned unit development, but that's a whole different criteria that you would need to comply with. Is it public streets, private streets, open space, who's maintaining it? There's a whole ordinance. I think it's like a 30-page ordinance on how to do a planned unit development. That's not even, it's not even codified in the zoning.
It lives outside, yeah.
So if that's the only way to, it's exceedingly difficult, and we're not going to be able to, it's going to be non-repeatable from a standpoint of it's a code that lives outside the zoning ordinance. And to Trevor's point, the state wants us to promote different types of housing. Doesn't need, it has to be 4,000. It could be 5,000. It could be 6,000, but the minimum's 4,000. So you could have varying size within the subdivision, but from an affordability standpoint, 4,000 square feet makes lots more affordable to residents, right? Less land to buy, not necessarily less house to buy. You could still put a similar size house that we had today, but the setbacks have been revised accordingly with the lot. You could have a 10-foot setback in maybe the 4,000 square foot lot. 7,000 is still 15. So the setbacks have been adjusted accordingly with the lot size. Now, speaking from a developer standpoint, 7,000 square foot lots have become exceedingly difficult due to increasing costs related to construction. Able to build more homes and lots within a subdivision allows the developer to spread the cost over more lots, and the cost per lot actually goes down because you have more lots. For example, if you have a stretch where you have 10 7,000 square foot lots, I have $100,000 of improvement, $1,000 per improvement, or $10,000 in improvement per lot. So if I'm able to increase and maybe throw 3 more lots in there, that cost per lot goes down to 83. So developers, because land is more expensive, construction costs are more expensive, they either need to have more lots to sell at whatever the going rate, market rate is, or they have to convince people to buy more expensive housing to make up the cost to construct the subdivision. That's exceedingly difficult given current interest rates, jobs, and other things. Smaller lot size promotes better affordability housing. It promotes variety of housing within the community that because of affordability issues allows land to be used in a more fashion by meeting the density allotments within the general plan. As Trevor said, we can't get close to 9 units an acre at 7,000 square foot per lot. And it's the standard that the state is pushing for. Part of the funding for this zoning ordinance update was to update the zoning housing, right? And this is one way of doing that, as well as giving more options on, as well as the mandated items, ADUs, duplex. Lot sizes.
The lot size,
The lot
really,
size,
not the
and so as you get, obviously, when you have a smaller lot, the home is gonna take up more of the lot. Have increases in lot coverage, you have less setback.
The higher density, the
It's
houses
a
will
higher
look
density.
closer to each other, yeah.
Yes, you could still do two
Could still
stories,
do
and I think you
two-story.
go up to,
Yeah, going back to my bad example.
absolutely.
But like the lot that came in front of you today, because of the way it was narrow, if this was a different zoning, they wouldn't need to come today. 1,700 is the smallest house that GJ Gardner is building in that subdivision. So the smallest house still would not fit on that lot, even though it's 7,000, but because the front is so narrow, they have to push the house back so much, it's gonna encroach. If we have a higher density where the setback is smaller, even if the lot is not 7,000, then we don't need a variance for a house like this, so. But it depends how you plan the subdivision from the get-go.
Perfect. No, I love the discussion. I don't mean to be dry, but no, it's. So in that same vein, moving on to the commercial and industrial development, mixed uses are now a more prominent feature in the zoning ordinance, where it was allowed under our previous or the current ordinance. It was more difficult to achieve a horizontal or even a vertical mixed use type of development. So with this, we're streamlining that, we're making it allowed in the commercial developments with specific standards, such as like what you would want to see in a vertical, for instance, a vertical mixed use package, which would be, commercial on the bottom, residential 2-3 stories above. So that's what we want to better achieve. Like Jerome was saying, providing a widespread variety of housing is really important and one of the goals for the city of Selma, because we always hear people want to move to Selma. There's just no houses. And so the more variety we have, the more people that can, come enjoy the community.
Different word than variety, I'd say flexibility.
Flexibility, yeah. Yes, flexibility in addition to, kind of just pushed by the state, but also the market is also going in that way too. Like Jerome had mentioned, smaller lots are more attractive for home buyers because they are considerably more affordable to the first-time home buyer or whatever the case may be, or young couple, things like that. In addition to that, implemented standards for the existing central business district. We have a central business district, but now we have standards for the central business district. So that's going to allow for the approval of newer use permits, the implementation or the, upgrading of some of the improvements that need to be done in the area where a new use permit would be, or in the event that a new development were to occur. The central business district is obviously kind of this area where we're in the downtown area near City Hall. So that's an important update for the ordinance as well.
And I would want to stress too, those are implementation standards, not the objective design standards for downtown, which are still in process. So establishing uses, what's allowed downtown, but not how it will look.
Additionally, we have specific development criteria for gas station and the density of gas stations. I know that's been a topic of conversation in the past, specifically with the planning commission, because gas stations are permitted via CUP, which is under the planning commission's discretion. So we know exactly where the new gas stations are going to be. And so we do see that they are only allowed in certain places, and we typically have seen a proliferation of those gas stations coming about in the last couple of years or so. So we wanted to make sure that we're not slowly overran by gas stations. We want to promote a variety of commercial uses as well. The new standard is not more than 2 gas stations per intersection. So for instance, Dinuba and McCall. Dinuba and McCall, it's essentially half built. You know, you have 2 corners that are undeveloped, and you have the southwest corner that is in the county, and then you have its Burger Time. And so the mandate there, or the requirement, if it gets adopted and codified, would be that no more than 2 of those corners would be allowed to have a gas station. Whereas under the current zoning ordinance, the 4 corners could be developed with a gas station over time. And so you would have just a very dense population of gas stations. So that's something that we've seen implemented in neighboring jurisdictions, and we kind of want to see that implemented in the city of Selma, because we think that'd be, you know, a great idea, and it would move the city forward in a sense. Additionally, outdated commercial uses were renamed or removed. So for instance, you know, older commercial uses that you would expect of a zoning ordinance that was built in the 1960s, or was created, written in the 1960s. You know, there's not a lot of blacksmiths around, or I'm sorry, saloons. Well, now they're bars, but that's the renaming, just to make it more colloquially friendly. You know, that takes the interpretation out of things, right? And that's what one of our goals is, what we wanted to achieve.
So this is always a fun discussion, right? If you had someone come in as a bar and it said saloon, it's a bar, but then a saloon has some historical context. Do you have to allow for things that go along with it, right? So as Trevor said, updating the terms is really important from staff's interpretation standpoint, so that we're not guessing at what people are driving these days. If it's Bronco, it's not the same as a 2023 Colt or Bronco.
So I guess if somebody wants to open a saloon in Selma, we're not gonna allow.
Not
it.
anymore.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Okay.
Ask them to go through the PDR process first, and then we'll vet that way. So to kind of round it out, the definitions, that is the last chapter, but it's one of the more important chapters as well. We consolidated all the definitions into one central location, whereas with this municipal code or ordinance and others like it in other jurisdictions, it's often spread around different chapters or sections where they have signed definitions, and then they have definitions of uses in other zone districts, things like that. Now it's all consolidated in one spot, so you can just Control F and find whatever you need rather than having to look around for it. So it makes it a lot easier for staff and the general public.
Some of the zoning code amendments over time did exactly that, where they may have had definitions that could have been directly conflicting with something else in the code. So we tried to eliminate those by having definitions in one section of the code, so that if you refer to something, the definition is added in that section instead of it living in a subsequent section that could conflict, have internal conflict with that's a huge, I think, point to one section and say, if you're doing a duplex is this.
Righty, so with that being said, yeah, absolutely.
So Trevor highlighted the major updates. What I want to stress though is we didn't overhaul the zoning ordinance. There are still lots of sections that have carried over from the existing zoning. If anything, consider this exactly that, an update, but there's major updates within. So there are sections that still apply. They've just been consolidated. Many of the standards still exist in some form. They may just be identified in a different area, but a lot of portions of the zoning ordinance still live in this document. So I don't want to make it seem like we set the other one on fire and tossed it aside. We took it, refurbished it, updated it with tables, figures, so that it was clear what we were trying to get at while adding specific items to improve it for all the purposes and all the.
Did we clarify what constitutes remodel, what percentage? Because that was a very big gray zone.
I believe so. In particular, I think that might be in the non-conforming chapter. Usually we get a lot of requests detailing in the event that there's a fire or whatever the case may be, or the home experiences some type of damage, we take a look at the existing zone designation and we determine whether that house could be essentially rebuilt in the exact spot that it was, or depending on if it's non-conforming, which unfortunately a lot of these homes are. Specifically in like on the west side of town, where a lot of those homes are a little older, and so they had different rules to abide by. Obviously, we're changing things up and making things a little more streamlined, but that is where that would come into play. In the event that there is a remodel or there is a disaster, then the home needs to be repaired up to a certain percentage, then that would be allowed. And that could take place. Otherwise, if it's damaged more than that, then it would have to go through the formal planning process and make their development, say if it's a single family home, compliant with the more current development standards of that specific zone district.
Right, yeah, that's why I was asking now, do we now know what percentage? 50? Okay.
%, yeah. Sorry, I was buying my time for them to look it up.
Oh, okay.
So specifically, extension of non-conforming uses or structures, section 11-5.5. A non-conforming structure destroyed to the extent of not more than 50%. So it's a very measurable criteria that can be implemented by staff.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Next slide. Not cooperating with me. All right, so lastly is obviously our recommendation. We're recommending the Planning Commission's consideration and subsequent, the Planning Commission's consideration and subsequent recommendation to City Council for the approval of the comprehensive zoning ordinance update, the objective design standards for residential uses, the notice of exemption with the accompanying findings of consistency. That's staff's presentation. That's all. Yeah, that's all, folks.
This is a public hearing item. During the public hearing, I will first ask for staff's comments and reports on the item being discussed. After staff's presentation, I will then open the hearing to public testimony. I will then close the public hearing, at which time no member of the public shall address the commission unless specifically asked by a member of the commission through the chair. The planning commission will then discuss the matter amongst themselves and take action on the item being considered. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing. If anyone is speaking for or against the item, they can approach the podium, or if anyone's online. Yeah. So please state your name.
Hi, my name's Clemente Gonzalez. I just want to go back to number 3 here. You guys did not open the public, well, this is all new to me. I don't know if we can go back.
So item number 3, because it was continued, that's why we didn't open it to the public, because we were not going to take any action on that item.
No, I got something in the mail and, that's the only reason why I'm here, but I guess I'll just
We
come back whenever.
apologize.
It's okay. No,
January.
But if I may add though, I like the way you guys presented everything with I guess what you need to do with the permits and whatever it is. But I mean, it's a good thing, but when you already have something operating on your street in regards like a mental or sober living home and how they did it, I don't know what all this applies for, if they're already up and running and we didn't even know about it. We didn't get nothing in the mail in regards to that.
They are not up and running. The business has not begun yet. They were bringing it to the planning commission for approval for the use that they want to do it. So, and that is being continued to January 22nd.
Yeah, we don't want to talk
Yeah,
about, we don't want to discuss the item
we
further
can't.
since it's
Then
not.
I'm sadly mistaken because I think there's a sober living in our street already. I understand how that got passed through you guys. Beats me. I'm Goldrich.
What we can do is we could take down this gentleman's information and we can have a discussion about it and get to the bottom of it. And if we need to do some investigation on permitting, we can do that. But as the city attorney said, that item or any other item not pertaining to the zoning ordinance, we can't really discuss right now. But sir, we will get your information and we will look into it.
Thank you so kindly. You guys have a nice evening.
Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor or against this item? Anyone online?
No, there's no one on the line.
Say Eric Vonberg with Rincon Consultants, and I just wanted to commend staff for all their hard work on this project, and it was a pleasure working with them and with the whole community in developing this zoning code.
Mentioned the heavy lifting in terms of organization and responding to random staff comments about the zoning ordinance that was prepared. Rincon, along with their subconsultant, Mintier Harnish, were responsive to staff's concerns. We had numerous conference calls. So we just want to thank.
No one else online?
No, there's no one else.
Okay, we'll close the public hearing and refer the matter back to the planning commission.
I think this is great. I think the consolidation and the streamlining of our codes was long overdue. I think this is a wonderful thing. I personally would like a little more time with it before we make a decision, but I'm also okay with the deadline. So if we have to have a special meeting in December so that we can discuss this further, that would give me personally ample time to go through it to see if I have any questions that come up.
I agree with Commissioner Gray. Yes. So because this is going to be a big responsibility as we we know we do need this update, but along with that we have to make sure we don't leave any stone unturned. So we need a little bit time to go through it. And also, like, it was in my mind, like, we want sooner the update, but haste makes waste. So we do want to word that. So in my opinion, like, we can have any special meeting in December. I'm ready for that.
No offense to staff, but yeah, getting this thing on a Tuesday or Wednesday and then over a holiday. Not everybody was up for reading all this stuff, so.
If I may, we were prepared for commission's reaction to that. Again, we just wanted to make sure we were trying to follow the timeframes that were generally provided to us by HCD of when they wanted to see it completed. Felt that this was an initial step because it was a regular meeting and so, staff isn't, naive to know what we're doing. I had the conversation with Chair Salas last week about our understanding of it, and that we would be amenable to taking comments from the commission and forwarding them to council if a special meeting wasn't possible, and including them in the package, or having a special meeting to have, workshop the item more, respond to specific comments in the zoning ordinance that you guys have. I saw some eyebrows raised with the gas station requirement. That is a standard thing that is done in some communities to promote different uses at an intersection rather than for gas stations. So we're amenable to that. We're welcome to take questions, have meetings, whatever it is to move this item forward, whatever needs to happen.
When can we schedule a special session? Because I do think we need to have this approved before the end of December.
I can't do December 11th. I'm not here. What about like either December 7th or the week of the 18th? You guys will be gone which day? The 7th?
Yeah, and I won't be here on the 7th either.
7th is not good for me either.
Also won't be here.
Week of the 18th? Would the 20th work?
Will they not be having a council meeting on the 18th?
They will not be. I'm just trying to think. I think I come back the 18th.
So we can plan in the morning as well, like if you think like.
You guys want to do it? It's up to the commission. It's going to be a special meeting regardless. So date and time are can be adjusted accordingly to your guys' schedule. So
Because like coming 6 p.m., it may take if we come sooner, and we have plenty
Maybe
of
we do
time.
an afternoon session,
want to do like
like
3
right
o'clock?
after lunch or something, or
I'm-
3. It's fine.
I just need a day.
It's as I said,
Time,
it's up
you
to
know.
the commission. If the commission wants to do 3 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 1:30, we just have to confirm availability of the chambers before we do that.
I'm
So-
on vacation that week, so,
Oh,
and then the week after, and then the week after. So I'm available.
aren't you lucky? So the 20th would work?
The week of the 18th is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay,
Wednesday works.
we will go check the calendar right now, and this will give me time to plug that. I can't do the 11th because that's my son's birthday.
Like 10 a.m.
Yeah, that's fine.
Be done by hopefully noon or 1.
Well, but I mean, if we
Mine is the
start then-
12th, my son's,
Yeah.
yeah. His principal of the
I
day on the
think
11th, and the
we don't
12th
have
is
to
his
worry about
birthday.
lunch if we start
Turns
like at
1
1.
year old
We
on
can
the
take
11th.
a break and have a lunch.
I'm is that age. Now, mine turns 12 years old,
Well,
so
that's what I'm saying, but
he's gonna be a big boy. Yeah. Oh my God.
Questions
Mhm.
and not make them go through everything.
No, we're
Yeah.
supposed to
We're
read
gonna
it.
Review it, and then we're gonna say, I have these questions. In fact, we should email staff ahead of time. So they. Then we can just boom, 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 be out here an hour, hour and a half, hopefully. And
I wouldn't have brought up
you
PUDs.
take us all to lunch.
me,
No. You eat at
retired.
lunch.
I'm on, I'm on a fixed income. I'm retired. No overtime for me.
Individually, right?
Yeah, no, group email.
No Brown Act
Yeah.
violations.
Should we send them to Kamara? Or do you want them, Jerome?
I would send them
Both.
to the department. You can send them to Kamara. They'll make it through. But per the Brown Act, you guys need to send them to staff, not include each other
Makes sense.
on it.
Don't
So,
group, don't include
No,
ourselves.
okay, no group
Okay,
text.
it's the
yeah,
same
no group
question
text,
4
no
times.
group emails. But what we can do is notice accordingly, and they're discussing it over there, so I'm assuming get further clarification. But any questions, you can send to Kamara, copy me, copy Trevor, copy Lupe. City planner should be the one receiving the zoning.
We could do an afternoon meeting. That would work.
Does that work for everybody here?
Like 1:00. 30.
The 18th and the 19th, 1:30? 20th at 1:30.
20th at 1:30.
1:30 or 2 o'clock?
What date did we say?
The 20th,
20th?
Okay,
1:30 PM.
I am.
Yeah,
Keep it-
PM, I put PM.
It's funny.
Okay, so we need a motion.
Any other technical questions, any inquiries now that the commission has that we can get a head start on? If not, we'll just wait for your guys' comments again, sent to Kamara individually to staff before the meeting.
ideally, if we could have those questions, say by the 15th. Staff 3 days too.
To kind
Say
of,
at the latest, the 15th.
okay, we need a motion to continue the item.
Move to continue the item to the special meeting on 20 December at 1:30.
Second.
First, motion, Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Second motion, Commissioner Corey,
Yes.
Commissioner Franco,
Yes.
Vice Chair Singh,
Yes.
and Chair Salas.
Yes.
Motion approved.
Move to adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm ahead of myself. I was on my phone and my calendar. I lost my mind.
Oral communications, notice to the public at this time, any member of the public may address the commission regarding any item over which the commission has jurisdiction. No action or discussion will be taken on any item not on the agenda. Issues raised will be referred to the chairperson for review. Members of the public shall limit their remarks to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to come forward for oral communication at this time?
There's no one here.
Anybody
Besides-
online?
Besides the agenda, just I want to take 1 minute or 2 minutes. So whenever you see someone having turban on his head, so today is the day, it's the 554th anniversary. The founder of Sikhism was born. So we are celebrating, and like why we are like this? Because this is a sign for others, like we surrender to God. In India, when like there was Hinduism, Buddhism, and a lot of religions, and people were busy in like worshiping millions of gods. So the unique idea of believing in one God, the Supreme Lord, it started 554 years back. And along with the going in one direction, believing in one Lord, there were so many social evils Like if a husband dies, people used to burn wife alive with his fire. So we fought against that. No, we don't need that. Child abuse, child slavery, discrimination on the basis of caste and creed, race, so many things. So talking about equality, in India, equality was started to be preached 500 with the birth of our Guru Nanak Dev Ji. So I wish you all, happy Gurpurab. So since, diversity is the beauty of this country, we, whenever it's needed, we come all together. We are with each other in happiness, in sorrows. So I just wanted to bring to your notice that Sikh community of United States and the world, we are celebrating the change which came on this earth 554 years back with the birth of our Guru Nanak Dev Ji. With that, I say thank you for always, showing support with one another. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Did you say Guru Nanak?
Guru Nanak.